I've been working with elderly patients for 22 years. And if you ask me what has taught me the most about life, it wasn't the conversations. It was the waiting. Because unless you've spent time inside a room with someone at the end of life, you don't really understand. Waiting there is different. It has weight. It fills the space. It changes the way a person breathes, moves, even how they organize their day. Some patients start getting ready hours in advance, even when no one confirmed they're coming. I've seen women ask to have their sheets changed twice in one day, not because they were dirty, but because it looks nicer this way. I've seen men who can barely get out of bed ask to be helped into a chair near the door. Not for comfort, but for the view. From there, they can see who walks by in the hallway. There are small rituals that only show up on those days. Fixing their hair, even when their arms don't cooperate anymore. Asking for a light touch of perfume. Choosing a specific shirt. The one someone gave them. The one that still carries a memory. As if somehow they still want to be recognized, seen, remembered as who they were. And the most striking part is they don't say it out loud. No one says, "I'm waiting for someone," but everything in them says it. The way they ask for the time, not once, but repeatedly, with shorter gaps in between. The way their eyes drift to the door every time a cart makes noise in the hallway. The way they pause mid-sentence when they hear footsteps approaching. And that almost invisible disappointment when those steps keep going. I've even learned to recognize different kinds of sighs. There's a light one, just fatigue. But then there's another, deeper, quieter, the one that comes when hope starts to lose its strength. And still, they keep waiting. They hold on to time however they can. They hold on to their energy, their attention, their presence, as if they're saving everything for the moment someone finally walks through that door. But there are days when time keeps passing, and no one comes. The light in the room shifts. The hallway grows quieter. The staff keeps moving, medications, checkups, adjustments. And in the middle of it all, that waiting slowly starts to fade. It's not a sudden break. It's a slow dimming. They begin to let go. Little by little. First, they stop looking directly at the door. Then they stop reacting to sounds. Their body sinks deeper into the bed or the chair. The hand that used to fidget now rests still on the blanket. And then comes one of the hardest parts to witness. The moment they start making excuses. Maybe it rained. Traffic must have been bad today. Maybe I got the visiting day wrong. They protect the ones who didn't come. Even then, even alone, they protect them. And that says more than any complaint ever could. Because this isn't just about a missed visit. It's about a quiet fear of no longer being someone's priority, of no longer holding the same place in someone's life. And when that realization begins to settle, it doesn't come through words. It shows up in the body. In the way they give up on that day, without saying it. In the way they accept the night, without looking at the door anymore. And it's in that kind of silence that you start to understand something no one teaches you when you begin this work. What hurts the most at the end of life isn't physical pain. It's realizing, little by little, that you've been pushed to later. After visiting hours end. The place changes completely. It's like someone switches off an invisible part of the environment. Before that, there's still movement. Voices crossing the hallway. Footsteps that don't belong to the staff. The sound of bags. Chairs being pulled quickly. People trying to make the most of the little time they have. Even those who didn't receive anyone are still inside that energy. There's still a sense of possibility in the air. But when it's over, none of that remains. Doors start closing one by one. The hallway empties. The sounds go back to what they always are. Cartwheels, distant monitor beeps, quiet conversations between staff. And inside the rooms, there's a kind of silence that isn't just the absence of noise. It's the presence of something that didn't arrive. I've stood in those moments giving medication, adjusting pillows, organizing trays, and what weighs the most isn't the work. It's what isn't happening. The patient no longer asks for the time. They no longer look at the door, but they don't truly relax either. They stay in this strange in-between, as if their body is there, but something inside is still trying to process what went wrong. Some turn to their side and pretend to sleep earlier than usual. It's not sleep. It's a way to shorten the day, as if sleeping could skip ahead to tomorrow, a new chance. Others stare at the TV without really watching. The images change. The sound keeps going, but their eyes don't follow. It's just a distraction from facing the emptiness left behind. And then there are those who try to keep things normal. They comment on the food, ask simple questions, say something random, just to keep the silence from growing too large between us. But the silence grows anyway. It settles in the space between sentences, in the delay before answering, in the way their voice comes out softer, shorter. I've come to notice that after visiting hours, the rooms feel heavier. Not physically, but emotionally. Because at that point, there's no more expectation, only confirmation. The confirmation that day, no one came. And that changes the rest of the night. It changes the way they take their medication, the way they answer when you ask if they're okay. It even changes the way they close their eyes. Because it's not just another day that passed. It's another day they weren't chosen. After a while, you start to realize these aren't isolated moments. It's a pattern. The names change, the stories change, the families are different. But in the end, the feeling that surfaces is always the same. And it usually shows up when there's nothing left to do about it. I've heard it in so many different ways that now I recognize it before the sentence is even finished. It starts quietly. Sometimes it comes in the middle of an ordinary moment, while I'm adjusting a pillow or handing them a glass of water. They pause for a second, stare at a fixed point, and say it almost like they're thinking out loud. I should have gone more often. Or, I thought I'd have time later. It's not dramatic. It's usually soft, contained. Like someone trying to make sense of their own life while they still can. And what strikes me the most is that it's almost never about big mistakes. No. One talks about huge fights or irreversible breakups. It's about the things that don't feel serious when you're living them. The visits that were postponed. The calls that got pushed to another day. The family lunch is cancelled because of work, exhaustion, routine. Small absences that slowly turn into a distance no one noticed growing. I've heard people say, I'll stop by another time when I'm less busy. And later, I hear the same sentence, just reversed. I thought I'd go when things slowed down. But later never comes the way we expect it to. And in the end, what remains isn't the busy days or the responsibilities fulfilled. What remains are the empty spaces that could have been filled. And that's what makes it so hard. There's no going back to fill them. There's one woman I'll never forget. She had 3 children, all alive, all busy, all present in some way, but rarely there. One evening, after another visit that didn't happen, she said to me, "It's funny. I always thought I was doing everything for them." And then she went quiet. There was no anger in her voice, just a kind of late realization. As if, in that moment, she understood that doing things for someone is not the same as being with them. And this shows up again, and again, and again. Not as heavy guilt, but as an unavoidable truth. People realize it, but they realize it when they no longer have the time, the strength, or the chance to change the story. And that's why it stays with me. Because it's not just one case. It's a sentence that crosses different rooms, different faces, but always lands in the same place. The realization that the presence they postponed doesn't come back the same way. Over time, I stopped judging at the beginning of my career. I thought it was neglect. I thought it was coldness. How could someone just not show up? How could they let days, weeks go by, knowing someone was waiting? But after years of seeing both sides, the ones in the room and the ones out there, I understood that, most of the time, it's not that families do love. They just live as if time has no limit. I've spoken to sons and daughters in the hallway who genuinely cared. People overwhelmed with work, raising kids, constantly rushing, and they all said some version of the same thing. This week was impossible, but next week I'll come when I can stay longer. I want to come on a day when I'm not in a hurry. I don't like rushing visits, I'd rather do it properly. And it sounds reasonable. It even sounds responsible. But time inside these rooms doesn't work that way. That better moment almost never comes. Because while life outside keeps being rearranged, life inside is coming to an end. And no one really notices when the line is crossed. There's no warning. No specific day when everything changes. It's gradual. The person still responds, still talks, still recognizes. And that creates the illusion that there's still room, still time, still a chance to wait a little longer. Until one day, there isn't. And one of the hardest things to witness is when the family finally makes it. When they clear their schedule, cancel things, walk into the room thinking, now I'll really be present. But they find someone different. Quieter, more distant. Sometimes unable to hold a conversation. Sometimes barely able to recognize them. And then something happens that's very hard to put into words. Because the meeting does happen, but not in the way it was imagined. The presence arrives, but too late to be lived the way it once could have been. I've seen children hold their mother's hand and say everything they couldn't say for years, while she no longer had the strength to respond. I've seen people crying beside the bed, not only because of the loss that's coming, but because of the time that won't come back. And in that moment, it becomes clear. It was never a lack of love. It was the quiet habit of postponing. The illusion that there would always be a later, better, calmer, more perfect. But life doesn't wait for the perfect moment. And the end waits even less. There's something I've learned over the years. And it never gets easier to witness. The realization always comes. But most of the time, it comes too late. It doesn't arrive all at once. It's not a dramatic breakthrough. It shows up in small ways. In how a person starts looking at their past differently. In the longer silence after a simple question. In the way they hold someone's hand just a little tighter. As if trying to hold on to something already slipping away. And when it fully settles in, there's no distraction that can soften it. It's no longer about the day someone didn't visit. It's about all the days that were pushed aside. I've seen patients who, in the end, stop asking if anyone is coming. That they start talking about their children differently. They go back to old memories. When their kids were young, simple moments. As if trying to return to a time when they were still truly present in each other's lives. It's not just nostalgia. It's an attempt to reconnect. Even if only in memory. And on the other side, when the family finally realizes, their pain changes too. It's no longer just fear of loss. It becomes a desperate urgency to make up for it. Dot to talk, to be there, to fix what can't be fixed. But time doesn't respond anymore. I've seen people start coming every single day, after months of absence. By the bed, holding a hand, talking for hours. But now, there's no response. No exchange. No space left where presence can still be shared. And that creates a very quiet kind of pain. Because there's nothing left to do with it. No action can undo it. No conversation can bring it back. All that's left is to feel it. And that's why, after all these years, if there's one thing I still think every time I walk out of a room like that, it's this. No one regrets the time they spent with the people they love. But a lot of people regret the time they thought they still had. Because life doesn't warn you when it starts becoming too late. It just keeps going. And when you finally notice, it's already behind you.